what we're talking about is getting people to just like loosen up, essentially, like just relax. And so much of what I see and talk about with clients and people in general about presenting is that everybody talks about presenting as if it's a performance. Like I did a talk for Toastmasters the other day here in Lisbon, and I saw the post that Joao, the head of the organization, wrote on LinkedIn, and he's like, "Come see two master storytellers perform." And I was like, "Well, it's not really a performance." I kind of bristled at that a bit, but I'm curious your thoughts about that, about people seeing presentations as performances, how that affects their performance. Obviously there are two meanings of that word. What have you noticed?
I think it's it's everything. It's certainly, to me, I had a sticky note in the pandemic when I was really struggling that said, it's not a performance, it's a conversation. And yes, you may be doing the majority of the speaking, but if you can change your mindset to think about it as a conversation, everything opens up. It's like, number one, I think people can easily fall into a presenter voice where, talk about inauthentic, it might not even sound like them. It's like really serious and you look serious, and that's not engaging. And if you feel like it's a conversation and you're talking to your friend, your voice is going to have more energy. You're going to use your hands more. And then I think most importantly, you're making space for the audience to speak. So sometimes in my coaching, I'll notice people will ask the audience a question and I'll say, "Did you want us to respond?" And they'll go, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, well, we need to pause and tell us what you're noticing. Maybe call in somebody. Oh, I saw you raise your hand. Tell me more." And so I think once you get that into your mindset, that it's not a performance, it's a conversation, everything opens up.
Yeah.
So
and it's
important.
True. I found that really helpful too for doing social media videos as well. I used to get so freaked out because, I have my camera and I'm doing my thing and I'm like, oh my God, like, I mean, it's not like I have a big audience or anything, but I was like, there are many people watching me or watching this video, and I would lose my mind. And then I can't remember who told me, they said, well, just imagine you're talking to one person. And I thought, oh, that's easy. And like, I could put that person in my head and talk to them. And then all of a sudden everything changed. It was so much more authentic. And it was fun for me then, because like you said, it's this conversation, even if you're not getting the feedback from them in real time. So yeah, speaking to one person, it's really helpful.
And what's counterintuitive about that is I think that it takes a few reps of practice to get to that place. I mean, like anytime, for example, this is, a script that I have for a class I'm teaching tomorrow. And my process is I will type out everything I'm going to say and print it out. And at first, when I'm first saying it, it sounds very robotic. But then once I know it enough, I put it away and then I just talk to it. And it's the whole goal is pretending like I'm telling a friend. So the language is less formal.
Yeah.
But the first time I say it, it's not going to be conversational. And I think a lot of people steer away from practicing because they don't want to be robotic, but you can only become conversational after you do it a few times. You have to really internalize that content first.
Yeah, it's so true. One of my favorite quotes is by the actor Donald Pleasance. And he was back in the 70s. I don't remember what show he was in, but he said, all the real work gets done in rehearsal. And I love that quote because it's so true. It's like what you're saying. I have the same process. I winnow down my script. I'll write it all out. I have my slides, and then I'll just go through this editing process. I'm like, what can I take away? What can I take away? And then I'm usually left with one like pithy statement. And it's funny. I did a workshop recently, and I had my assistant there, and she had my script. Like I wasn't looking at it; it was in person. And after the workshop, she said, "Oh, it was really interesting because sometimes you would lead with the point and then you would elaborate and give examples and tell stories. And then sometimes you would elaborate, give examples, tell stories, and then you would end with the punchline of the point." She's like, both were really effective. but it was very alive because you knew it wasn't memorized, but you always got that point in there. And
Right.
that's what you're speaking to as well, is this, like, you can't, you have to rehearse being natural, like, essentially.
Right. You do. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, my neighbors probably think I'm crazy because I love walking and rehearsing because I don't know,
Yeah.
something about being outside, it all kind of clicks for me. I mean, I do think it's important to practice with slides, but I just like being outside and moving.
Yeah.
And my neighbors see me and they kind of laugh. Oh, you've got a presentation coming up. I'm like, I do. I do. But it's funny for me too, because it's not just about the delivery, but then I make connections where I'm like, oh, that's what that means. Or, oh, it's actually that. And so,
Yeah.
and that deeper understanding of my content only comes after several, practice rounds.
For sure. Yeah. And I saw on your LinkedIn profile, you've coached people for TED, like TEDx talks, or what's your experience with that?
Yeah, several speakers who were getting ready for TED Talks. I helped prep for in South by Southwest. And I think that those situations or in keynotes, they're a little more script heavy. I mean, they don't have to be, but I think that there's check-ins and various things. And so for those, the preparation is really, really key and would be more time consuming than other presentations for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And is your general advice to go ahead and memorize something like that?
Yeah, I think it would. Yes, I think I would really know what I want to say and memorize it. But hopefully you're done with the content at least several days before. And then at that point, you can deviate a little bit. It doesn't have to be every word line by line, because I think the trouble that happens is if people memorize and they skip a line, they freak out.
They freeze. Yeah.
And so always with the idea of the script is your loose guide, but you have to be willing to free flow and deviate a little bit. Cause I had a really bad experience with memorizing something one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a storytelling event. I don't know, probably 2015, 2016. I was very into going to storytelling shows. And a couple of times I went up there, and you're not allowed in these shows to have a script. And this particular show was 10-minute stories. So it's a lot of content.
Yeah.
And I think there's one thing I kept telling myself, what if I forget? What if I forget? What if I forget? So I'm running this negative story. And so I get up there, and by the way, it's hundreds of people. I invited a bunch of my friends and family, and I get up there, I get a minute into my story, and I just blanked out, couldn't remember a word. And I was freaking out because I just thought, I don't know what to do. And so I said to the audience, I said, I can't remember my story. And they were like, oh, it's okay. And as soon as the silence was broken and they were talking to me, I remembered.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I was so mad. I was so mad that I messed up. And I told my friend, oh, I blew it. And she goes, it's really good. Because back to our earlier point, I had presenter voice, and I was very focused on the content, and it wasn't conversational. But as soon as I got some feedback from the audience, I remembered again, I was much more conversational, and it was fine.